Well, we will start. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending. My name is Mark Daniel. I'm your city manager and your chief of police, although I don't look very much like a chief this morning by design. Today, we've got a number of people here to help you understand what's happening with our water system and why. I would like to introduce them to you. So sitting in the back left, also attempting to hide differently, is Tara Von Flew. She's our finance director for the city. I've got on my right here, Alan Dahlberg, your city public works director. Colby Kemp is sitting back here, kind of operating the recording system. He's your city administrative services director. And then on the far right here is Matt Wadlington. He's with Civil West, our city engineer of record for the city of Mount Angel. Immediately on my left is Sam Waller of OAWU. And can we stop and could you tell them what OAWU is?
Oregon Association of Water Utilities. So
right.
Represent all water utilities in the state.
Thanks. And then Scott Berry of OAWU. So once again, thank you for coming this morning. I appreciate your interest in learning as much as you can and giving us an opportunity to attempt to educate you the best that we can. I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions at any time. So as I'm going through this information, please don't be afraid to raise your hand, yell Mark or whatever, and we'll stop and we'll talk about whatever you'd like to talk about. I have prepared information to be consistent in providing accurate information. So what I intend on giving today is just what we gave about a week ago at our first meeting. And so I guess I'd like to explain to you why we're here today. Most of all of this information is on our website. So if you've already read it before, I apologize, but repetition is a good thing. The water department here in Mount Angel delivers clean drinking water to over 1,000 residential, commercial, and industrial customers. The groundwater source from either of our two active wells then goes into the distribution system. The distribution system is comprised of over 20 miles of pipe, nearly 1,000 valves, as well as 2 reservoirs that total over 1.3 million gallons of storage capacity. As a matter of practice and as required by law, the city of Mount Angel tests its water on a regular basis. This test looks at the health of our water that you receive from your tap at any given time. We publish an annual water quality report that is available on the city's website. The city recently experienced several positive test results for total coliform bacteria. Each time our sampling resulted in a finding of total coliform, we verified our process for sampling and investigated potential sources for the finding. No location for the source of the total coliform bacteria can be found. Repeated positive samples of total coliform bacteria have prompted the Oregon Health Authority to require the city to introduce chlorination as a means of correction to its water system. Total coliform bacteria are not harmful and are naturally present in our environment. However, they are an indication that other potentially harmful bacteria may be present. Please note, all test results for the potentially harmful bacteria have and continue to come back negative. The city is currently implementing the plan. Currently, what we're looking at doing, and here's our timeline, if you will, and I'll start by going back to October of 2023. The Oregon Health Authority sent us a letter requiring the installation of a treatment system to maintain a disinfectant residual throughout the distribution system, meaning to be able to chlorinate to a detectable level, but not to a significant level, just to a level that is detectable by the testing media. December 2023, a request for quotes and RFQ for installation of an on-site hypochlorite generation system. And I'll stop and tell you that a hypochlorite generation system is a system that generates chlorine to be introduced into the water system by means of salt. So it's a hypochlorite generation system. We don't use some type of bottled chlorine or anything like that. It's actually generated and then introduced into the water system on site. That was sent out to contractors with a deadline to submit the completed quotes by the 29th of the same month. In February 2024, a contract with Emery and Sons Construction Group was signed to install a hypochlorite system. In March of this year, an article was published in the city newsletter and posted to Facebook and Instagram in regards to this. We began flushing the water system through fire hydrants and will continue through the summer as needed. In April this month, chlorination implementation information meetings were announced at City Council. That obviously worked. You folks are here today. Another article was published in the city newsletter and posted to Facebook and Instagram. We also have mailed a letter in both English and Spanish to each Mount Angel active water account, including landlords and property management companies. April 11th, we had our first chlorination information meeting, which I think went really well. On April 15th, installation of the hypochlorite system components began at well 6, and installation, I believe, was completed. Yep.
So this is already started?
Well, we haven't began to chlorinate yet, but the system had to be installed at well 6. We had to put a brand new system in at well 6. Well 7 had actually both wells had a pre-existing system. So they had actually chlorinated the water sometime in the past. At some point they decided to turn that off. So we had a pre-existing system actually at both wells. When we were looking at this being a possibility, I asked Alan to check out those systems in the event that we were mandated to chlorinate. And so we determined that the system installed at well 6, which is the older of the 2 wells, was antiquated and needed to be replaced. The system at well 7 was still in reasonably good condition and usable. So we asked the company to come out and take a look at it, and then they brought it up to speed, and it's completely usable at this time. But we had to install a brand new system on well 6. And the reason we have to do one at both wells is because, quite simply, and I'll draw up in the air above my head, we've got a well here, we've got a well here. We've got a pipe that runs out of this well, we got a pipe that runs out of this well, and both of those pipes then come into the water system, which is, we attempt to make it a circular system, if you will, but that water system just comes in rather than the pipes going from the wells up to the reservoirs, which are on the Abbey Hill. It actually all goes into the water system and circulates, fills our reservoirs up on the Abbey Hill, and it's a constantly moving system. So that's why we need a system here, we need a system here, because we draw off of both of those wells directly into the water system for Mount Angel. So here we are with our second chlorination implementation meeting. Our anticipated start date is May 15th. So here's what you can expect. When we go live on the 15th of May, you may experience a smell of chlorine in your water and possible discoloration at first. If it is discolored, the discoloration is due to iron deposits, i.e. the hard water, in the distribution system reacting to the chlorine. The amount of iron in our water is not harmful, but is aesthetically unpleasing. To lessen this inconvenience, Public Works, as I mentioned before, began an aggressive water system flushing procedure in March. The city intends to continue to flush the water system for the next several months after beginning to chlorinate the water, as the chlorine in the water will actually loosen the iron deposits that are actually in the pipes. The city intends to continue to flush the water system after we begin to chlorinate. And if you notice discolored water, we ask that you run water from an outside hose bib or bathtub faucet until the discoloration clears up. To assist the city in flushing the system, we're going to ask folks that are connected to the system to do this at your home frequently for the next several months. Since you will be flushing your pipes more often, You will only be billed for the amount of water that you used for the appropriate month. So when we go live in May, you'll be billed for May. But you'll be billed in the same manner that you were for the previous year, not for the additional water that you're likely going to use to flush your system to help us run this out. In this way, we can work together to remove the deposits of iron, which can cause flow issues for both the city and you as the customer. The city has created a special web page for the chlorination of our water system to keep you informed. We have a QR code that you can use a smartphone to go right to it if you'd like. The web page contains the letter from the Oregon Health Authority mandating the chlorination of the water system, timelines, flyers to the public meetings, and also an FAQ section. We tried to anticipate as many questions as possible that folks might have so that we could try and run down those answers and get that information out to the public as quickly as we could. We've developed a hotline, which has actually been used. And we also have a email address, which is water@mountangel.gov, that we aim to respond to those inquiries and questions and challenges within 24 hours. So that's basically what I have prepared to say. If you have questions, that's why we have the experts here to try and answer those questions. Keith?
Yeah, I've got several questions. I'd like to just kind of preface that though to say that I have great faith that all of you here are have very best interests of the public in mind. And, so I don't take this personally. Before this chlorination was mandated by the Oregon Health Authority, were you concerned about the fact that there was some positive testing for the total chloroform bacteria?
Sure. We were quite concerned. In fact, when we first received our first tests when this happened, I was asking Alan, what does this mean? And what do we do? What are our procedures? How do we go through to verify this? There's a system in place where if we do receive a positive test, we have to go back and test upstream, downstream, and take another sample. So we go through these verification procedures. As a matter of fact, when we were kind of going through this, Alan even had I think our folks from OEWU engaged, as well as the Oregon Health Authority, to make sure that our testing procedures were being properly followed, and that all the cleansing that we were possibly doing to make sure that we were running water before we actually took the test. We went through all kinds of ways to try and verify what was going on and to try and mitigate it the best way that we could. Unfortunately, over the course of time, we had too many tests come back positive. And as a result, the Oregon Health Authority then mandated us to chlorinate the water system.
Okay, but you said in your letter that the total chloroform bacteria are not harmful.
That's correct.
Okay, can you elaborate on that?
I'm gonna move to the experts.
So coliform bacteria in and of its total coliform bacteria in and of itself is not harmful. It's used as an indicator organism because it's essentially the stronger swimmer of that bacteria category. Meaning if it's able to survive in the water, then they need to take repeat samples and look a bit more closely. Coliform bacteria is something that's present in all of our bodies all of the time. It has a survivability rate in soil up to 2 years. So it's around us all the time. That's why they use that as an indicator, meaning if it's present, then they need to take those repeat samples and the triggered sample from the source and see if there are other bacteria able to survive in that environment at that time. And that has been negative every time it's been sampled.
Oh, but that's interesting to me because even though there was found some total chloroform bacteria, your testing also revealed that there was no harmful bacteria
Right.
in water.
Right.
So it sounds to me in a way that begs the question, why chlorinate? Why fix something that's not really broken?
And unfortunately, the response to that is in order to stay in compliance with Oregon Health Division, who has the mandate that if you get 2 positive coliform samples within any 12-month period, they mandate the chlorine.
Coliform is like a gateway to a more intense bacteria like E. coli. Without the presence of coliform, the others cannot grow.
But your testing has not shown anything that's
Correct.
harmful in the water.
That's correct. That's correct.
So in addition to that, though, I'm just wondering, if you really carefully considered the downside of chlorination. By that I mean, is the cure worse than the disease? The water tastes bad. Statistics have shown that there is a higher incidence of various types of cancer in communities that are chlorinating their water. Research has also shown that chlorination also produces toxic byproducts in the water called trihalomethanes, which I'm not a botanist. I don't really know.
That's one of the compounds as a result of chlorine. But we don't know what's in the water that may help create them. That's a question.
Yes, but these are known carcinogens. And it could explain why communities that chlorinate have an increased incidence of cancer. Have you carefully considered these things?
Yeah, we've, so the negative effects of chlorine, a taste and odor, are generally present at a certain level of chlorine. We're hoping to stay lower than that. The generation of trihalomethanes, THHMs, disinfection byproducts are generally a result of chlorine interacting with organic substances in the water. Although the water here is hard, it's got lots of minerals in it. There aren't any organics in the water because it's a groundwater source. So we don't expect there to be any disinfection byproducts. But those would certainly be tested for regularly once it's implemented.
So you don't think that that's, there's no problem with the interaction of chlorine with whatever is in the water? It's not going to cause a health, you're saying that it's not going to cause a health problem for anyone?
I'm going to say that we don't have any information that it will.
Well, there has been, of course, I'm not an expert on this. I'm just giving my own thoughts. I know my wife has done considerable research on it. The U.S. government classifies chloroform as a probable human carcinogen. California considers it a known carcinogen. And these are a concern to me. I don't like chlorinated water. And then my last question is, I just wonder if the Oregon Health Authority itself is bowing to someone with vested interests in the chlorination process. Who stands to benefit financially from chlorination? Are those in the Oregon Health Authority acting out of unreasonable fear, given the fact that there's no evidence of harmful bacteria in the water?
That's a big question. And really, I will say that OHA is likely bowing to somebody else, but that somebody else is EPA. What they're required to do is adopt by reference all of the mandates put forth by EPA on a nationwide basis. And not to get too far down a rabbit hole here, I think all of this comes from a place of keeping public interest in mind. And I believe that of Oregon Health Authority as well. If you look back before about 1907, prior to chlorine being initiated into public drinking water systems, you heard a lot more about a lot more people dying from things like cholera and dysentery and Legionnaire's disease and a whole host of other problems. And you don't hear about that anymore because of chlorine. So yes, chlorine. I grew up on a well with no chlorine. I prefer the taste of unchlorinated water, but as a water system operator, I like the insurance in my ability to help protect the public with the use of chlorine.
There's a simple solution. You don't drink it.
I understand.
And other things like Brita filters, other types of water filters can deactivate or get rid of that chlorine at not much cost. So, yes, sir.
How is this going to affect the water softener and the RO years?
So it depends on the make and model of the water softener. You're gonna have to go back to the manufacturer's specifications and recommendations for each one of those types of devices. But for the most part, I've not heard of chlorine being a negative for those. Maybe you can provide.
Yeah, so chlorine will eventually, it'll shorten the life of the ion resin inside of a water softener. That can be easily fixed with some sort of pre-carbon filtration on the water softener. And we're talking about basic chlorine. Chlorine is fairly easy to remove if that's what you want at your home. Chlorine gases off. So if you ran your water into a dog bowl, right, or a pitcher, and you set it on the counter, then once it comes in contact with the atmosphere, that chlorine is actually going to gas off. With what the city's talking about doing, a Brita filter or anything like that at point of use will work very well for anybody in the city. If you want that at point of entry because you have sensitive skin or something like that, we're recommending some form of carbon filtration if that's what you'd like to remove. The city's just looking to, it's got to put chlorine through the system and show a residual. A good way of thinking about coliform is that the table is set for something potentially to go badly, right? If coliform exists, then E. coli can happen like that, and that's why Oregon Health Authority mandates chlorination after X amount of failed samples.
Yeah,
He had a follow-up question. Sorry.
I was given two solutions to this problem. One was $500 improvement filter gauges, and the other system is almost $1,300. And it will last for longer, and it will still be maintenance. I just need it.
I believe that, any change or whatever to the water, yes, is on the individual resident, on the individual customer. We don't have provision to make any of those types of changes or attempt to assist at this time with that.
Kind of hard to boil water for a whole house.
Thank you.
How expensive is this going to be for us? Because ultimately, we have to pay for it.
I'm sorry.
How expensive is this going to be for us? Because ultimately, we have to pay for it.
Well, we have absolutely no plans to raise your water rates as a result of this. Council reviews water rates every year.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
We do pay property taxes, and the property taxes support the city. And, the city is gonna have to pay for this, chlorination system. How expensive is it?
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, it's just, I don't have the exact numbers, but it's just shy of 100,000. So it's in the $90,000 range. And that's for the equipment and the wiring. So the initial cost for the installation, that's where the expense comes. From here on out, buying salt is probably the cheapest way we can go.
And what's the salt gonna cost us?
I think it was $600 a pallet.
And how often will we go through a pallet?
I have to determine that once we start.
Probably once a quarter or something.
Yeah.
So,
So it is.
Was the UV ever considered in this for sterilization?
UV can't be used because what the Oregon Health Authority requires is that there's a residual disinfectant at the end of the system, and so UV will sterilize any bacteria, but there's not a residual at the end of the system that you can
Right.
confirm that it's
So
done.
it's not coming out of the wellhead. And the question I have, I'm a water resource engineer. And I'm kind of puzzled, because it's sort of like they're using, total coliform. It's sort of like, total phosphorus is not necessarily an indicator of poor water quality because of its availability in its form. And I'm thinking, why aren't they targeting fecal coliform explicitly and, fecal, streptococci, and why aren't they doing that? Because the total coliform is not quantitative to the actual threat. And so, it seems like it's a poorly directed and managed thing on the Oregon Health Authority, and they're making a mandate based on crappy science and engineering. And why are we paying the cost for it? And why isn't it a reasonable solution? And then the other things are like source water protection. And it's not like there's 1,000 head of cattle right here on the periphery of the city with some sort of fecal source. The fecal coliform is warm-blooded animal. And there's a big separation distance between any animals that are here and the groundwater down below. So the groundwater is fundamentally clean. And it's rich in iron because of the geologic formations in the soils. It's all over the place. And iron bacteria is ubiquitous. Wherever you see groundwater springs and seeps, and in some of our creeks, there's groundwater seepage, you will find iron bacteria very likely or very easily. So it's sort of like, what's the threat? And we've been living with this long before people have even walked this landscape.
I think the issue is that, and you probably know this better than I, but in a groundwater source like is for the city, you shouldn't expect to see any total coliform coming out of the groundwater.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're finding it in the system means somehow or another, it's getting in there.
Right.
And if that's getting in there, they can't guarantee that anything else isn't getting in there. And so the solution is to put a disinfectant in there that can kill any coliform,
Yeah.
whether it's fecal or E. coli.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm also thinking in terms of iron bacteria is no dangerous than eating yogurt. That's bacteria as well, or what they ferment beer and wine with, yeast. It's all bacteria. And you kind of go, okay, it's all over the place. We're breathing it in this room.
Right.
Viruses, bacteria, and things like that. It's like, what's the real chronic risk here that's being managed? And I think that they're misapplying the regulation, and they're not really addressing the real risk. And I think what needs to happen is they should have said, okay, you're on a monitoring notice. You're going to monitor more frequently and stuff like that. That should have been the first step.
Well, they had a positive hit, and so they did have to do follow-up tests, a total coliform.
Yeah, but that could be a boogie monster. Again, it's not, it could or could not mean the presence of fecal.
Absolutely.
So
Right.
it's one of those things where we need to test for the real risk, not for the perceived risk.
Yeah, and those are the tests that they followed up and did and got negative results on any of the harmful bacteria.
That should have been
Yeah.
confirmation that should have satisfied them, and then you keep testing until there's a hit, then you got it. And the fact that they're prescribing this solution question sometimes is like, okay, who are you to prescribe the solution? You know, it should be left up to you as the engineering professional to find out what is best.
Yeah. That's just state law
Yeah.
that does that, which is why the city is having to do this and doesn't have the choice. But
My question.
I don't disagree.
It's state law, but he said man, which are two very different things. So isn't there no way in our residents actually gives OHA authority to Angel do this? Whether they've adopted the EPA guidelines, I mean, that, I didn't see that in any of the letters, it's like,
Yeah,
where are we following?
I'll read you the letter.
Sure.
So this is dated October 17th, 2023. It's been made out to Alan Dahlberg, Mount Angel City of, regarding installation of treatment to maintain a disinfectant residual due to persistent coliform bacteria at OR 4100544, which is us. Dear Alan Dahlberg, due to recent coliform sample results, comma, the Oregon Health Authority, comma, Drinking Water Services, parenthetic DWS, and parenthetic, is requiring another coliform investigation. The number of coliform investigations at your water system without removing the source of the coliform bacteria requires the installation of treatment to maintain a disinfectant residual throughout the distribution system, according to Oregon Administrative Rule 333-061-0032, parenthetic 6 and parenthetic lower G and parenthetic period. Treatment must be installed no later than 4/19/2024. Plan review is required prior to installation. Please review the requirements at www.healthoregon.org/PWS plan review, period. If you have any questions, please contact Chantel Wickstrom at 971-666-8512. Respectfully, Drinking Water Services, and CC to Chantel Wickstrom, DWS. We were, and just for, and we asked them to come to any of our sessions here, and they declined and said that they would not come. Interesting. Go ahead.
Please.
No, there's a biofilm that forms in water pipes that's common. And it's like, water, I was on the clean water side years ago, and mostly on the dirty water side, and surface and sanitary floods and storm. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going back to the old days, and I was looking at water supply in Northern California. And it's like, oh, I had to do a model of the transmission system. And I had to account for the thickness and buildup on the inside of the pipe of the biofilm. That's common. Yeah, because the nutrients that naturally exist in the minerals and things, and basically it's probably some kind of coliform bacteria. And that's common. And so they're making a boogie monster out of something. I'm curious. I like to know more than the nuts and bolts of what's going on in the heads of the people authority and health authority. And, and again, going back to total coliform is not a quantitative metric for fecal coliform. And that's a fundamental principle that we should, say, wait, let's go work from that point and say, what is the real risk that we're trying to manage? And that has not been accurately quantified or defined. And that's my question. But I don't have an answer, and I'm just I'm just trying to put it out there for thought. And I'm kind of puzzled as to, what real problem we're solving.
On that same note, I've been thinking a little bit. I got the opportunity to come to your first informational meeting, and I thank you for it. It's very good. I thought a little bit more, and it seems to me like, so we are wanting to prevent toxins in the water, bacteria, we're going to call them toxins. If they're not toxins, then we don't care, right? Because you have to have bacteria in your body, in your water. It's, whatever. We're trying to prevent those toxins that are not there by putting toxins in the water. It doesn't make any sense. And we're gonna keep them at a level that is safe, that nobody's proven is safe. And you look at research for cities that use those safe levels, and all of their cancer rates are higher and other diseases. We are therefore exposing ourselves to unnecessary health risks to our loved ones, ourselves, for no grave reason. And this is a grave thing we're going to undertake. You're going to pay for this. We are going to. And the thing is it may not pay for it right now, but our health will pay for it in the long run. It's been proven. You look at all these different research things, and people will not fund research on it who have vested interest not to fund, and they say there's not been enough research. People who don't, have vested interest in one way or another and do research have shown, yes. Okay, so here's where we stand. We are putting the public at risk by doing this. And we are increasing the amount of funds that are gonna be drained that we pay in taxes. And I've heard our governor complain in his letter to the city that we are poor and we need to go to somebody and ask them, do you have an uncle who's a millionaire? We need money now to pay for all these things. And yet we were told that this is going to be a very expensive endeavor at the last meeting, and it costs money to upkeep it. So our cost of living is going to go up in one way or another. And our health is going to be unnecessarily at risk. I'm wondering at this point, because I believe, like Keith does, that you guys all want what's best for us. I don't think anybody here has any ill intention. I just think this happens so fast, there's not time to really even think. You're just okay, we gotta do this, we gotta do that. But it seems to me like if we could slow down and say, what are the pros and cons? There doesn't seem to be any pros at this point. I'm 100% for doing something that's gonna make us healthy. I don't care if it's in a bottle. But in this case, it doesn't seem to be, and I don't care if it's a salt tab. In this case, it doesn't seem to be. And calling it salt doesn't take away the fact that it is a toxin. It doesn't take away that. And saying that it's less unhealthy than other methodologies doesn't make it healthy. And saying that it's not as at an unsafe level, there's no proof. And so we're mandating that we have toxins in our water now when there were none before. And we're paying for it, and we're making ourselves poorer. What can we do at this point to say no? What is going to happen to us if we say, if it becomes unsafe, we will do something? What happens to the city of Grand Angel? Do we lose money from the Oregon Health Authority? Is that what we are worried about? What will happen if we listen to common sense and say, we will do what's best for our people? We were voted in or appointed because we represent the people. And this is our job. And the Oregon Health Authority, they were fast-tracked into position not too long ago. And they say that one of their most important people behind them is the public, but also the pharmaceuticals and the stakeholders. Those are the ones with the money. Those are the ones who benefit. That is not why I'm here. I'm not here to point fingers. I don't care if they benefit, if it benefits us, but it's not benefiting us. I'm happy if it's benefiting them. My point is, this is not good for us. If it's good for us, do it. But there's no proof that it is. And what's going to happen to us if we say, well, we'll do that if it ever becomes a necessity. But as it stands now, according to what your criteria is, it's not criteria that works for safety. It works for something else, but we're worried about safety. And so that's what we're doing.
Well, I imagine if we didn't chlorinate and we didn't follow up on the mandate, they would start penalty fining us.
Yeah.
Which is why I don't.
What is Chantrell Wilson's job? What's her title?
That's a good question. I know she's my contact, but I can get that information for you.
And then also, I think it's, do homework, let's get up on his OARs on the 333, dash 0610032. Do our homework and get familiar with that and find out what is the real essence of that ruling. And if there's any recourse to alternate action. Again, it's one of those things where the essence is we didn't have time to analyze and actually assess the risks. What are the real risks here? It's almost like if you were forced into a very reactive posture. You had to respond to a mandate. We were at a disadvantage, pushed onto us by the state.
Well, we're not the only municipality in the state that has gone down this road or had to go down this road.
Yeah.
And as a part of my due diligence, that's why we reached out to these experts, is to figure out what we really need to do,
Yeah.
what we can do, what is the minimally invasive
And
result, if you will.
sustainable solution and cost effective, because you can get into slippery slopes of expensive infrastructure and constant O&M.
That's one reason we went through, making sure that the systems we had in place would still work. Because, as you just mentioned, without calling it out specifically, something much more greater than what we propose to turn on, if you will, i.e., some type of filtration or other types of water treatment applied to this water system would be millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And we would have to build one at each one of the sources. So that's what she was referring to.
Yeah.
What we've had to pay, we've been able to pay within our allotted budget that was approved and allocated by the city council. We have sufficient funds to be able to operate the system as required. So I don't anticipate needing to pass on, but one of the things that I did mention at the previous meeting that I'll mention now is certainly because of this issue, but honestly, we needed to update our plans anyway. Our water plan for the future is currently being redone, and that's one of the things that Matt and his firm is doing for us, is creating a new water plan for the city. And what is it that the city needs? Where are we going in the future? And how do we need to begin to prepare for the future as it relates to our water system?
So with that,
Go ahead.
we start adding chlorination. Do we have any expectation of some of our piping being failing throughout town in the future, in the near future?
Well,
We did down by Rockford years ago.
yeah, we've had a variety of checks, I'll call it varieties of chunks of pipe that have failed, we have a very old system here in town. We just replaced 800 feet of pipe on South Main that was probably well over 100 years old. And had broken in 3 separate places that our public works folks had to respond when it was really, really cold and patch back together and get going. So we do have aging infrastructure, and part of that water plan is to take a look at that and where do we go from here?
I guess my question is more related to chlorination and the sediment that we're flushing. The process of flushing, is that going to stress and strain the system now? And could we be seeing more of those failures in the near future because of that?
I'm not really anticipating, because we have a lot of ductile iron and cast iron in our system. I'm not anticipating it's gonna do much to that. I believe it could to galvanized piping possibly.
I wouldn't anticipate any real issues, anything noticeable. I mean, if you guys have old infrastructure, it could, different areas are gonna have leaks regardless, but you're gonna be running such a low number. It shouldn't have any effect on really anything.
Do you guys have much mineral buildup on the inside of your pipes?
Yes.
We have some, yeah. So when when people tap into our lines, like, contractors and stuff, when they're installing new line, we get the coupons, and there is some inside. I haven't seen a lot of accumulation, but we do have a layer inside of pipe. And that's what we're trying to resolve with the flushing.
Yeah,
Just trying to scour the
some of it may not be very soluble once it's precipitated on the wall. So
I'm sorry,
some of it may not be very soluble once it's precipitated on the wall.
yeah, it might come out a solution though, eventually. That's kind of what we're anticipating, but it may not.
Okay,
It's still not clear to me whether, impetus to mandate this treatment is law or whether it is just some kind of administrative, decision.
yes.
According to the letter, we read it was an OAR, which is a law.
Yeah.
There. To non-follow.
Oregon Administrative Rule is just like Oregon Revised Statutes, which I have worked with for the last over 40 years, being in law enforcement. There's very little difference other than OAR is usually written just a little bit differently and tends to change a little bit more often than ORS, but OAR is virtually the same, and they can penalize you. And as was said, is likely in place because of rules that the EPA has put in place. And I've dealt with the federal system, Code of Federal Regulations some, but I haven't looked at the Federal Code of Regulations as it relates to water service and that type of thing. But I'm sure the state of Oregon and the city of Mount Angel does not want any citations or anything from the federal side either.
Okay, so you say they can penalize you.
Yes,
Is it by law that they're required to penalize you?
I don't know.
No, I think they
Okay,
are
so
authorized to.
Amount of reasonable defense of a different position. And send that and speak to them about that. Then there is at least a chance that they could say, okay, well, we won't penalize you. And so what I'm thinking is that rather than just going along with the flow and instigating this chlorination system and say, okay, we will monitor our system, continue to monitor our system very regularly and closely and see how it's doing. And if we ever detect that there is the bad bacteria in the water, we're set up to start chlorination. And that way we could avoid having to do something right now that may have other, as I feel there would be other deleterious or bad effects, the downside of the chlorination.
I appreciate your opinion. Thank you.
It's too late.
It's never too late.
Well,
If people want to make a change and say, what do we need to do to change this law? We will come together and work with our voices and they will listen. We have to be willing to stand up and say, we want to change this law. We want to bring it out in public knowledge that this is going on and get this out in the public eye. Things can happen. Yes, but we have to be willing as a city. Our city council would have really benefited us as a city if they were here so they could hear all of this. Because I'm guessing you guys didn't maybe all come for the city council to inform them so that they could be better equipped to represent the citizens' best interests. But yeah, there's always things that can be done if we want to. Depends upon where our hearts are. If we just want to avoid getting penalized, then yeah, we have another option, but we can avoid getting penalized maybe by doing a little bit of extra work, seeing what we need to do. And I don't know if anybody's here is interested in starting this discussion about what we could do in order to say we would like to see how we can get this law changed or challenge this law or go forward as a city, getting a lawyer to just type something up and say, this is why it's our constitutional rights, a federal right that we should be able to
But we have to
drink safe water.
do the homework on the Oregon administrative rule and then also find out any of the EPA requirements.
One thing I will mention, speaking of EPA, and I don't mean to interrupt you, is they have approved a a procedure to get, clean the water that doesn't leave residuals, toxins in the water, the diatomaceous earth type thing that they did back in World War II. Very good for water. And according to my knowledge, they've approved it, but why can't we do that? Well, because the Oregon Health Authority wants us to have residuals in our water. So it wants to give us what it's taking away from us. It's taking toxins away so we can give you some. And the interesting thing is apparently the way that we're going to be doing it creates less of those trimethylhalanes, whatever you call them, from the bottle chlorination. But it transfers those toxins to a different kind of toxins. So you're still, it's really, it seems pointless to go to that measure to put something in our water when we don't need to. And to endanger our lives in one way or another, over the long-term health effects and so on and so forth. Because our body is 90% water. Drinking it, we shower it, we our food's in it, we bathe in it. And lastly, the research I did, you can't totally easily get chlorine out of water. You can try to get rid of some of the smells and the tastes and stuff. But when I read, it's like, nobody said it totally gets rid of it. They didn't say it didn't, but they said mostly. And then looking at this water treatment from the environmental working group, they're like, you better do your research because people will tell you they'll filter things, but you got to make sure it gets all the byproducts that chlorine produces. So you've got to get it, you don't just get any old filter. So you've got to know what you're looking for. And so does it eliminate the trimethylines, whatever? Well, now we're not so worried about that because we're doing the other type and it's going to create a different type of a byproduct. And we don't really know what they are. I know one type of the byproduct, sorry, I'm going to end this right just a second. I know I'm kind of, but the way that we are doing our chlorination is going to be with the salt. Now, I know there's another way where you can do it like with gases and so forth, but is that the way the salt is, or is that a different way?
It's a different way. Generally, you can
That's chloramine, whatever. Okay, so there's different ways. So
chlorinate with gas, you can chlorinate with liquid hypochlorite that you buy in bulk, or you can generate your own. Also a hypochlorite. But those are just different methods of getting the chlorine into the water.
Using hypochlorite, not the sodium hypochlorite.
You can use either sodium or calcium hypochlorite.
Yeah.
One's a liquid solution, one's a solid.
Right.
So can this be put on a pause and let it go to a vote of the people in town who are paying?
No, we cannot. We've been mandated. I read you the letter. We've been mandated by the state. And they are the regulatory group.
If we didn't follow up on their mandate, we would be breaking the law as a city.
But can you follow my suggestion? Actually, presenting an alternative, let's just check what regular basis and see how we're doing. And if it turns out that, the bad bacteria you're getting in the water, then that's the time. It's just like this.
Well, sure, we can have that conversation with them. But we've already gone down that road because they've given us an opportunity to not have any more in the water system. But we've had repeated hits of total coliform. And as a result of that, then we were given an opportunity to not have to do that anymore.
can I ask you a question about giving an opportunity? They gave us an opportunity to retest. And we retested, but it was with the same company each time. And I don't know if they have any financially vested interests in any of this or not. I have no clue. I'm not. But I mean, it would be nice to get an objective third party who's not connected to us outside testing to see really what their results would be. before we take these measures?
And you mentioned that before, and we had quite a conversation about that at the previous meeting. And just to reiterate what was said, that, you know, the lab that we've been using is a certified laboratory. Has no vested interest, either way. And as a certified laboratory, that's the closest place where we've taken samples. Now, if we chose to go to a different laboratory, the cost may increase. And, we actually are going to pay increased labor cost, and it's gonna cost us more to travel and take those samples.
It's a small
so-
cost compared to what we're looking at. It seems to me like there could be a vested interest in the sense that if they're connected with the company here that benefits from Mount Angel's hard water and supplying their filtration system, maybe a different water testing source might be something to put our minds at rest that is totally objective.
One of the problems with that is, I think Alan mentioned that, or Mark mentioned that the last couple tests that they've done have come back negative. So you could take that same sample to a different lab and they could tell you that it's negative, but that doesn't mean that it actually was. That means that the sample that they got was negative. And I think it's very hard to compare those because it just takes
So it's
one.
really a point where we just need to, there's no logical, reasonable way to play this game or to work with them. The only logical, reasonable way to behave is to change the law. There's no real logic. So we need to change the law.
I agree. I mean, any law, and I've said this in my criminal enforcement for years. If people disagree with a certain law, then there's a process for dealing with that. And that's contacting the legislature and dealing with those.
Well, the problem is a lot of the OARs are not written by legislatures, so it's the unseen fourth branch of government called the administrative branch, and they make up the rules. And you're dealing with some unnamed, unknown bureaucrat somewhere who has a cause. And it may not be something that's rooted in absolute science or reason or justice. It may be arbitrary. And that's what we're kind of wondering about, is the arbitrariness of the mandate, because you don't have fecal coliform hits.
And I don't, Greg, I don't have any history on that. You know, I don't know who made the final decision. I don't know where this OAR came
That's the
from.
mystery here, and that's
You know,
why I asked,
but-
who is the Chantel lady?
Yeah.
What's her role here?
She's an employee of the Oregon Health Authority.
She's just maybe a spokesman for this cause.
I believe so.
Yeah.
But, you know, and when we asked, like I said, we asked for them to come to be able to answer a lot of these questions, and they said no.
Yeah.
So,
And
you
that's
know,
where the disconnect lies, and that's where our questions lie.
I agree with you wholly.
Yeah.
I would much rather have had somebody from OHA here
Yeah,
to be able to answer those questions.
yeah,
Because I did want somebody here, because that's where the mandate came from,
exactly, exactly.
but they chose not to do that.
Unfortunately,
Yes,
they're not taking responsibility for their action.
they made a choice not to be here and to face you as I am.
I'm curious why our council members aren't here.
I don't have an answer for you.
Were they invited?
Of course, everyone in the town was invited. The mayor was here last meeting. He sat in the front row.
I'd like to ask,
Go ahead.
I want to ask, what is the history of, why wasn't, it was shut down, right, for a while? The water tasted terrible, but, it was shut down, why? And then why all of a sudden it's back up again? Was the water better back then? And so they just shut it down? And then now it's terrible, and so they started it up again. So what is the history of why it was shut down?
I don't think we have a good answer for that.
A lot of times, if they're doing, so voluntary chlorination, so if there's construction, big subdivisions going in and they're doing a lot of taps under the line, they may have voluntarily chlorinated the system just to make sure there was nothing getting in there. And then once that was over, they were not mandated by the state to do it. They just were doing it voluntarily. So then they could shut it off once all that hazard has passed. And that's probably something that could have happened. We don't know exactly why, but that'd be my guess.
There's a number of things. I've been city manager now for 2 3/4 years, almost 3 years, in one form or another. And there's a lot of things that I can't find answers to. I've gone back, just myself, I've gone back and looked at council minutes, back some 20 years ago, and even further than that. And I've read through council agendas, and I've read through council minutes to see what was going on and to try and figure out, even for myself, particularly on this issue and others. And I know that there was a mention, and I couldn't remember the date, but actually I printed a lot of this stuff and gave it to Alan so he wouldn't have to search for it in the internet. But there was a council meeting where the superintendent for public works mentioned to council that there was hits on total coliform, and this is well more than 20 years ago. And then they retested about a month later and reported that there were no more hits. But I couldn't find any more mention of that over time. There was mention about the hypochlorite system being installed when they first built well number 7 on East Market. And there was mention that the system was on. But I couldn't find any mention why or when the system was turned off. There's some mysteries there that I'm not sure we'll ever get answers to. We find anomalies in the ground with our storm system, even with our water system. It's not a perfect science, and didn't map it all that well at times. And so we're finding things all the time, and that's why we're doing the best we possibly can. I wish I had all the history, because that would at least answer a lot of questions, perhaps. But I unfortunately don't have those, and I'm not going to attempt to make up the gaps in the history. It just is what it is, and we're presented with a certain set of facts that we're now having to respond to. Does that make me happy? No, it does not make me happy.
So now we start this system, which is going to cause people to wonder what chemical is gonna do. I just don't like the taste of the water, and that's the only worry about.
And that's why we're having a water plan done. That's why we're trying to look at this and do some strategic planning for the future. What does this look like? What is it that we can do in the future? Certainly based on the OARs that were presented in that, what kind of system can we build that will make this a system that maybe we won't even need chlorination. I don't know. I'm not a water expert. That's why these guys are here, and that's why we use experts that are available to us to be able to determine what the best thing is for the future. And so that's why there's a lot of, there's a lot of pressure on Matt. I wouldn't want to be Matt right now. Because there's a lot of pressure on Matt as our new city engineer of record to be able to provide that document. And as I mentioned, we're updating all of our plans. So this is just a start.
So I have a little thought. So, I also don't like chlorine because it does take away some of the bacteria and stuff that you do need in order to be healthy, to keep a healthy immune system. So I'm not, if you need it, you need it, but if you don't, let's not. But so what I'm thinking is this, if we're making the choice to chlorinate the water, is there a system that can filter the chlorination at the city site, so each household doesn't have to pay thousands of dollars to do so? And we could pay a little bit in taxes extra for that if we need to, or whatever. But there are many people who can't afford it, and it just doesn't seem right. Like, why don't we just filter it at the source?
Well, that's the thing. Our source water
Yeah,
is not the problem. The problem is within the distribution system. So it's the pipes that run underneath the streets and up to the individual, houses and that type of thing. It's not the well water. It's the distribution system. So if we were to replace all the pipes in the distribution system, that may be a resolution. But I don't know. Once again, I'm not an expert.
Expensive resolution.
What's that?
That's an expensive resolution.
Yeah.
right, and the thing is,
So
like.
100,000.
Well, the 100,000 to install or whatever. But isn't, but again, when you chlorinate, it does erode away. I mean, certain types of chlorinations will erode away the pipes a little bit, and so you don't know what you're getting. And it's creating new compounds in the water that you don't know what you're getting. So I don't know, it just seems expensive to do it. But I've interrupted you. You said something about 100,000?
He said it would be expensive to go a different route, and I said, I think you said it's 100,000 already.
Yeah, the hypochlorite system, the new hypochlorite system, is about $100,000.
Just under 90,000 and change.
To replace the entire system, you're probably looking at something in 25 to 30 million. So.
Well, speaking to this gentleman's concerns, on the environmental, working group, they give recommendations about filtering chlorine. That it is cheaper to just get a carbon filter rather than pay thousands of dollars. Unless you have a huge family. But I don't know, I mean, but then again, they say do your research because not all of them will filter out. You gotta know what you're looking for. So we would need help from the city to know what to look for when we go to buy a filter. If you guys, or the engineers, could provide us with what we need to look for, that would be really helpful. Like in a newsletter, when you buy a filter, look for one that does this, this, and this, now that we,
The unfortunate thing is, it's kind of like recommending an alarm system. We're not in a position where we can recommend a particular vendor or a particular filter system or anything like that.
No, I don't want you to tell me what brand, just like, what am I looking for to filter out? Like, what things from the chlorine, like, they say that you're filtering out the triosomane, whatever, and then with the salt, it's gonna create a different type of thing we need. So what are we looking for that is gonna, is it gonna be nitrates or is it gonna be something else? One of the byproducts from one of them is different types of nitrates and they don't even know it all. And it's also, they don't really know what they're supposed to filter or how in some of these cases.
The city is required to publicize a water quality report annually. And so you could take that report that says what the water is to a supplier of a filter and say, this is my water.
Thousands of dollars. No.
To take our report and just give it
To
to
go
them.
to a supplier and they're gonna wanna help me if I don't buy their product. Hopefully they would.
And you're wanting just to dechlorinate it, right?
I mean, well, and filter out any other things too, if there is anything that needs it, but.
Yeah, but if you reach out to a private water company, any private water company that does residential filtration, you get a smattering of estimates. And most of the people that work in this industry are very passionate about water. So the direct answer to your question, if you were just trying to remove simple chlorine, you would use a high capacity carbon filter. I would lean some that's more catalytic based. And if you were extremely concerned about the potential trihalomethane, then I would install carbon at point of entry to your home, and I would install an under the sink point of use reverse osmosis system with a high capacity carbon in front of it.
I can't afford on that, we're just basically looking for feed filters.
Well, it really depends on the grade and quality, and I'm here to just be helpful and answer any questions. I don't want this to come off as opportunistic in any way. We're trying to set up some sort of thing with a financing company, because we understand people can't spend thousands of dollars and they don't have that available. So we're trying to work out internally in our company, we're trying to work out something to help out the residents of Mount Angel. So it's not such a dramatic financial hit to you guys at your individual residence. So we do those estimates on site. Our showroom is open. You can reach out to anybody else in the water industry. If you need a referral, call the Oregon Groundwater Association. There's several different outfits that can help you guys out and answer some of your questions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So who are you with?
I'm the general manager over at Shiloh Water
Oh.
Systems, right over here behind the Napa here in town.
So we have some professional. Who are you with? Are you not with anybody? You're just.
I'm actually a general engineer here. That's what but I'm not involved with this project. I'm a citizen of the town.
Oh,
It just happens to be a water resource engineer. Yes, sir.
I know there's been a lot of yes and no for these systems being forced upon the cities. Have you contacted any other cities that have been mandated to do this? Where there's a pushback and they maybe have some advice or?
I'll let Alan and our folks at OAW respond.
I will say, I mean, I've talked to cities who have had to do it. They've not tried pushing back. They're just going ahead and getting the system set up and going along with it. The city of Sublimity just went through this fairly recently. You remember how, yeah, that, and they went through with it and continued on. I've not heard of a city fighting the state and anything going on with that.
Well, the city of Portland had a combined sewer system that was started like 150 years ago. They used to just run all the sewage to the river. And then they built interceptor to take the sewage to a wastewater treatment plant. But then they still had capacity limitations, and under extreme flow events, rainfall events, you'd still get sewer overflows into the Willamette River and Columbia River. So the city was mandated to $1.4 billion to build a big pipe project that was completed about 10 years ago. And that was a huge mandate. And it's like, wait a minute, it took 150 years to make the problem. Why can't we solve the problem in the course of 50 years? But the issue was the regulators said, no, you're under a consent order and you have to do this. Otherwise, you're going to be severely fined. And that's a similar situation, but on a much smaller scale, is that we're being forced to do something in compliance to some mandate. And it's like, the irony was, there wasn't a single case of somebody who got sick, sewage overflow. And the same thing here, not a single case of somebody getting sick from drinking city water. But you can't tell that to the regulators. You know, they want to hold a standard and they're going to hold it hard. And so we have definitely and reason doesn't always fly with them. So, yeah, has anyone gotten sick? Well, think about the thousands of people that come here every year, you know, the tourists every week in and week out, and people coming to the Abbey, people, you know, then in Oktoberfest, and the hundreds of thousands of people that show up. No one has gotten sick drinking the water, especially this last year. So it's a paradox. You know, we're all frustrated on that point.
Thank you, Greg.
Well, I hope that all of you will take to heart the thoughts, questions that we've all brought up and think about those. And not just go with the flow because it's the easiest way to do it.
You
Thank
need something from any of us in order to make that happen. Because a conversation will end with a conversation and it won't accomplish anything.
Well, we are all, I and Alan and I've already told you who all are the employees of the city. And if legislative action needs to occur, I mean, you as an individual resident of the city certainly have ways that you can communicate. You can communicate to the council at any time you wish, either in writing, come to a council meeting and talk. But as you mentioned, going to the legislature calling the Oregon Health Authority. You know, we're the ones being mandated. You're the ones who are you're the end user. And we've been as transparent as we possibly can through this process. If you're not happy with the Oregon Health Authority, please reach out to the Oregon Health Authority. Let them know exactly how you feel and what you think about that. You know, we'll take assistance from wherever we can, but I'm also going to be a good steward of your money and your resources and do the best that we possibly can. Because in the end, here's the thing, I have a conscience. And I have to live with this too. You know, I'm not just here for a job. If I was here for just a job and a paycheck, I'd already be gone.
Well, can I ask you a question about the Oregon Health Authority? I appreciate the fact that you don't want to break any laws. I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that we're trying to figure out a way to keep everything safe. And it doesn't seem like their solution is doing nothing but creating a problem. So there's not a really good situation, I guess. So the thing I'm thinking is, if we refuse to take money from the Oregon Health Authority, do they have any authority over us?
We don't get any money from the Oregon Health Authority.
Okay. Just checking, because they do give money for certain things.
Yeah, I'm not aware that we get any money from them at all. Are you aware that we get money from the Oregon Health Authority?
No, I just am aware that they do give money out for various causes, various projects that they want to see have happen. And so I don't know if they'd be willing to give money for this.
Yeah, no, this would be, I believe, an unfunded mandate.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, which is, as if you've been an adult in this state, a major complaint of the way things happen in a lot of different communities in a lot of different ways in the state.
I would say that, you know, as we're working through the water master plan, we're developing projects, recommendations. Those are gonna cost money. One source of money that the city can look to for helping to finance some of the water improvements is the state. And so they're not a payer paying into the city now, but that doesn't mean that in the future you wouldn't be asking the state for money for some of these water projects.
And I love asking people for money. Anything else we can do?
May 15th.
May 15th. Thank you for coming.